Welcome to Living Life. Luke's narrative of the voyage and shipwreck of Paul on his way to Italy is a small classic in its own right, as graphic a piece of descriptive writing as anything in the Bible. It has long been acknowledged as one of the most instructive documents for the knowledge of ancient seamanship, and it bears clear evidence of being the account of an eyewitness who viewed the sea through Greek eyes and described his experiences in vivid language. Human life has often been compared to a voyage across a stormy sea, and we can see in this passage Paul's amazing journey continuing on to Rome and God's provision for him in doing so, and see in this adventure story an allegory for God's provision for us in our stormy lives.
Acts chapter 27, verse 27 to 44. On the 14th night, we were still being driven across the Adriatic Sea when about midnight the sailors sensed they were approaching land. They took surroundings and found that the water was 120 feet deep. A short time later, they took surroundings again and found it was 90 feet deep. Fearing that we would be dashed against the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for daylight. In an attempt to escape from the ship, the sailors let the lifeboat down into the sea, pretending they were going to lower some anchors from the bow. Then Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, "Unless these men stay with the ship, you cannot be saved." So the soldiers cut the ropes that held the lifeboat and let it drift away. Just before dawn, Paul urged them all to eat. For the last 14 days, he said, "You have been in constant suspense and have gone without food. You haven't eaten anything. Now I urge you to take some food. You need it to survive. Not one of you will lose a single hair from his head." After he said this, he took some bread and gave thanks to God in front of them all. Then he broke it and began to eat. They were all encouraged and ate some food themselves. Altogether, there were 276 of us on board. When they had eaten as much as they wanted, they lightened the ship by throwing the grain into the sea. When daylight came, they did not recognize the land, but they saw a bay with a sandy beach, where they decided to run the ship aground if they could. Cutting loose the anchors, they left them in the sea and at the same time untied the ropes that held the rudders. Then they hoisted the foresail to the wind and made for the beach. But the ship struck a sandbar and ran aground. The bow stuck fast and would not move, and the stern was broken to pieces by the pounding of the surf. The soldiers planned to kill the prisoners to prevent any of them from swimming away and escaping, but the centurion wanted to spare Paul's life and kept them from carrying out their plan. He ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. The rest were to get there on planks or on other pieces of the ship. In this way, everyone reached land safely.
As someone who likes to be on the water and has spent a fair amount of time on boats, this story is fascinating to me. And if you'll think about what a stormy sea might look, sound, and feel like, and your own fears of it, then you'll put yourself in the right frame of mind to receive this text. The wind, the churling water, the heaving sea. Many of us are scared to go into the ocean at all, and certainly in the middle of a giant storm. The experience of Paul, and most likely Luke, is terrifying. So here the key figure is Paul, who shares the peril of his companions, and they've given up all hope of reaching safety. And toward the end of the voyage, he is in danger from the soldiers who plan to kill the prisoners in case they try to escape. And then when they land on Malta, his life seems to be threatened by a venomous snake. But it is the will of God that Paul will preach the gospel at the heart of the empire, Rome. And so this storm is not simply an adventure story. It shows us God's will in getting God's servant to the place where God wanted Paul to be. So we pick up the narrative in verse 27, where after 14 days of drifting in a storm, 14 days, they hadn't been eating, but Paul had just told them that there would be no loss of anyone's life, only the ship would perish, saying, and this is so good, so gentlemen, cheer up. I have faith in God that it will turn out just as I have been told. But the ship is approaching an island, actually the northeast part of the island of Malta, to what is today called St. Paul's Bay. It's a real place and, with lots of tourists visiting. The sailors dropped 4 anchors, and the text says, waited longingly for day to dawn. It's hard to imagine the famishment, the fear, the cold, the wind, the waves, and how drenched they might have been. Paul encourages them to eat food, and he gives thanks in Eucharistic language. Were they taking communion? Imagine taking communion on a stormy sea, knowing that most likely you're going to have to jump overboard into the water to survive. All in all, there were 276 persons on board. When morning came, they didn't recognize where they were, but planned to run the ship aground. And so they let go of the anchors and headed toward the beach, where the boat was to be broken up by the violence of the waves. Now, it would be easy for some of the prisoners to escape in the general confusion of abandoning ship, and so the soldiers decided to stop this by killing the prisoners. The centurion, however, wanted to preserve Paul's life, and therefore ordered everyone to jump out first and get away to land. And to the others, he ordered them to make their way on planks or whatever pieces of the ship they could find, and all reached land safely. Amazing. The angelic assurance given to Paul in their darkest hour had been fulfilled to the letter. The ship and cargo were lost, but every life on board was saved. What a story. What an example of God carrying on God's plan to completion. What about us? Let's run with the imagery of this scripture. Clearly, many of us are on quite stormy seas with trauma and turbulence in our lives. It could be a family situation, it could be financial peril, it could be friendship troubles. And you look around and you see your options are terrifying. Do I need to jump off into that cold and treacherous water? Will the waves swamp me? Do I need to stay on the boat? God, you said you'd protect me, and I don't know what to do. And then the most primal call of all, when it gets so bad that there's nothing left to do but to cry out, God, please save me. Have you been there? In that spot in your life? The psalmist knew it too. The waters are up to my neck, Lord. Save me, says the psalmist. Voyages and journeys can be very dangerous, especially at sea. Don't be fooled by the modern cruise ship industry. Life at sea has always been perilous. Same is true of our lives. Our voyages and journeys through life have also always been perilous. We can't be fooled by the safety of modern life either. We will need rescuing, at some time or another. Life is just too unpredictable. Will you be able to call out to your God, as Paul says in verse 23, to the God to whom I belong and to the God I worship? Don't be afraid to call out to God's name in your trials and tribulations. God will answer. God will be with you and get you where you need to go. Maybe even save you from shipwreck. So cheer up, good people of God, and have faith.